Alright, so some brand new Thor news just hit the web, and while it might sound like the return of Thor 5, hold on, there's a lot more going on here. This isn't just another rumor, it's coming from a well-known insider, and there's a twist in the details that could point to something very different. And yeah, because of what it's called and where it's coming from, it's worth breaking it all down. Real quick, if you love staying up to date with Marvel news and breakdowns like this, hit that subscribe button. Big thanks to everyone who's been subscribing lately, seriously helping the channel to grow. Alright, let's dive in. So this news scoop dropped a few days ago, and it's from one of the most reliable sources in the Marvel League game, Daniel Richman. You might know him on Twitter as RPK News, and if you're plugged into Marvel news or channels like mine, you've probably heard his name before. The guy has a track record that's hard to argue with. Here's what he posted. Marvel is developing a brand new project focused on Thor, and it's titled Thor Quest. Yep, Thor Quest. Now that name might seem simple, but it opens the door for a lot of speculation, especially considering everything we've heard recently about Thor's future in the MCU. And that's where things get interesting, because even with all the farewell vibes from Chris Hemsworth, Marvel might not be done with Thor just yet. Let's rewind a bit. Over the past year, we've seen multiple reports from big trades suggesting that Marvel wants to give Thor a proper send-off in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. Even Chris Hemsworth himself posted what felt like a heartfelt goodbye to fans and the character before starting work on Avengers Doomsday. But despite all that, the rumors about Thor 5 just won't go away. Multiple sources, and yes, big ones, have claimed that Thor 5 is indeed on the table for Marvel's future plans. And here's the kicker, it's not just about the project. There's been chatter about major changes, like Taika Waititi not returning to direct. And even Hemsworth himself admitted they needed to completely shift the tone of the next film. Why? Because Thor Love and Thunder just didn't land. Fans knew it, Hemsworth knew it, and Marvel knew it too. So it makes sense that Marvel would want one more film to really close out the Thor saga properly. But is Thor Quest that film? Let's talk about that. So first off, let's look at the title, Thor Quest. Now here's why that stands out. Vision Quest is also currently in development at Marvel, and I find it really unlikely that Marvel would greenlight two different projects with Quest in the name. That kind of brand overlap would cause confusion, even if one is a show, Vision Quest, and the other a movie, Thor Quest. Even if these stories were totally separate, fans would immediately start wondering if there was a deeper connection between the two, especially considering all the multiverse crossovers happening lately. But wait, it gets deeper, because if there's overlap between Vision and Thor stories, there might be more going on behind the scenes than we thought. So while I was putting this video together, something crossed my mind. Remember those leaked concept art pieces tied to Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars? Yeah, the ones the Russos denied were real, even though they came from an actual Marvel concept artist. Well, there was also art floating around for Vision Quest. It showed Star-Lord and Vision hanging out, bachelor style, in a chill apartment setup. Seriously. And that's where the dots start connecting. If Star-Lord is really returning for Vision Quest, and considering how intertwined the Guardians have been with Thor lately, there's a chance these projects might overlap. Whether it's before, during, or after Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, there could be some sort of link. But even if that's true, having two Marvel projects with Quest in the name at the same time still seems like a no-go. So what else could Thor Quest be? Alright, reason number 2 why I don't think Thor Quest is Thor 5 has to do with the source again, Daniel RPK. Now remember, he's been behind a lot of previous Thor 5 leaks, so if this update had anything to do with that same movie, he would have likely referenced those earlier reports or included more details. But this time, he didn't. He just said there's a new Marvel project called Thor Quest in development, and that's it. No extra info, no confirmation it's a movie, nothing that ties it directly to the past Thor 5 rumors. And here's another layer. While Daniel mostly reports on TV and film, every now and then he drops a scoop from the video game world. He was actually the first to leak a few big titles coming down the pipeline, not Marvel ones specifically, but still big gaming news. So yeah, what if Thor Quest isn't a movie at all? Personally, I think there's a strong chance that Thor Quest is actually a Marvel video game in development. Marvel's been investing a lot into gaming recently. Rivals was a major success, and they've got another fighting game on the way. So the idea of a new Thor-centered game totally makes sense. And I get it, hearing Thor Quest and knowing it's coming from a source like Daniel RPK, your brain immediately goes, oh snap, Thor 5 is happening. But knowing his post history and knowing how he handles scoops, And considering the weird timing with Vision Quest, I really don't think this is the Thor 5 project fans have been waiting for. Still, that brings up the big question, could Thor 5 still happen even if Thor dies in the upcoming Avengers films? That's the wild part. If Thor is really dying in Avengers Doomsday or Secret Wars, how could a Thor 5 happen? Unless Marvel shifts the focus to other characters from the Thor corner of the MCU. But honestly, that feels like a bad idea. You can't really call it Thor 5 if Thor himself isn't even in it. Now, one idea floating around is that we might see Jane Foster's Mighty Thor return.
Enough tomfoolery, why don't you take up that mask and reveal yourself? Come on. Jane?
This time as a Valkyrie from Valhalla, especially if Thor ends up dying and going there. Valhalla, as we've seen, isn't exactly a permanent stop. If they do a grand emotional farewell for Thor, it's still Marvel and you know what that means, he could still come back. Of course that messes with the emotional weight. That's exactly why Robert Downey Jr. didn't want to come back as Tony Stark, except he's coming back but as Doctor Doom. Definitely mark that one on the big asterisk. And I'll say this now and I'm calling it for the next 2 years. We're also seeing Tony Stark again in Secret Wars, and no, I don't think it's just Doctor Doom. So that's where we're at. What do you think? Are you excited for the idea of Thor 5? Were you hoping Thor Quest was it and now kind of disappointed? Or do you agree with my theory that this is probably a video game and not a movie? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back with more updates as soon as we get more info about this new Thor project. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more updates so you don't miss a thing. Catch you in the next one.